Let us now look at how do we log our model training experiments inside the mlflow tracking server. So what I have here is a Jupyter notebook, and the same notebook you can also access over the repository. There is a folder called notebooks, and I'm using this one. Let's run this locally so that we sort of understand how the tracking works. So let's look at the structure of this notebook. These are some standard imports that I'm doing. These are the paths to the data sets on the S3 drive. And again, this is a function that gets me the X and Y numpy arrays from my feature store. This is very familiar to what we have done in our feature engineering as well as our model training component. Now, this is where the changes would start happening. So I'll wait for this data to get loaded. I'll import mlflow, and the first thing I will have to do if you're trying to track your experiments from a Jupyter notebook, you will want to set your tracking URI. Now you can set your tracking URI by either creating an environment variable that points to this particular URI where your mlflow server is running, or you can set it up from the Python client as well. So in this case, we're setting up a tracking URI from the Python client. Then we need to set up an experiment. So experiment can be thought of as a unit of organizing your machine learning experiments. So let's say you're working on one particular project where you're using, let's say, CNNs to experiment with something. Then maybe you can set up your experiment as CNN version 1, something like that. So here I'm setting up my experiment. I'm calling it hotel occupancy. These are the hyperparameters of my random forest model. These are some imports, and this is where the things now become different. So you can see I have added statements such as mlflow log matrix, mlflow sklearn.log model, mlflow log parameters. So all the model training metrics are going to get stored in our Postgres database now. This is the trained model, and this trained model also needs to be stored along with the associated accuracy metrics as well as hyperparameters, and hyperparameters are being stored using the log params method. So if I run this now, it will create an mlflow experiment run. And if I go to the mlflow server and refresh it, you can now see that there is a hotel occupancy experiment. If I select it, you can see there is a run which is going on. It is still being executed. So after the model gets trained, the metrics get executed. The metrics will be logged into our mlflow server, and within mlflow server, they will be stored in our Postgres database. Also, our model will get stored on an artifact store, which in this case is the S3 drive, and our parameters will again be stored in a Postgres database. Now the run has finished. If I refresh it, you can see that the run has finished. If I go inside this run, I can now see that whatever parameters I had used, they are being tracked. Whatever metrics I had computed, that is being tracked. And not only that, my model is now also stored somewhere on the S3 drive, and this is a path of the S3 drive where this model is. Let's look at this particular path. I can go to my S3 drive and let's see the path in detail now. I have to go inside one, and then there are several runs that I had done earlier. So I'll have to search which one is this. Starts with 7F, ends with 9.8. So this is the location where my model artifacts are. If I click on it, I can see that all these model artifacts are being stored. And if I think that this model is good enough and I've done several runs, I can probably pick up the model from here, and I'll also know what was its accuracy, what hyperparameters were used, so on and so forth. So let us now see how do we modify our model training component to accommodate the mlflow tracking, and how do we run mlflow tracking from the training pipeline that we had written.